Thank you, everyone. Yeah, I thought it was rather odd that I came up with the topic of reincarnation when Lynn and Tim were putting together a song about reincarnation. We were independent of each other. Neither one of us knew what we were doing. So, well, I mean, we knew what we were doing, but I mean, that's a song. And I noticed there's 16 of us here today, which is, we're even with most people we've ever had. So thank you for coming. I'm seeing new faces here, so thank you for coming. Today my talk is going to be on reincarnation. The concept of reincarnation has been around for a very long time. It is the non-physical part of us that does not die when their body does, but is reborn into a different body. In some religions, this process is immediate without going to the afterlife. So imagine that you pass on, you go to heaven, it's like, I'm here, I'm home. It's like, turn around. So we actually do have some time over there. The philosophy was understood by the Eastern Indian religions, some pagan religions, Native Americans, and the Aboriginal Australians. Pythagoras, Socrates, and Plato discussed these ideas. And reincarnation in Latin means entering the flesh again. A lot of Eastern religions believe that we continue to recycle life after life after life forever and ever until one finally achieves enough spiritual enlightenment to stop. I learned in a documentary that there was the practice of burying the dead in India along the Ganges River, and usually places where the water is churning. They believe that this represents the cycle of rebirth. The bodies are buried at key places along this sacred river as stopping places for each life. Those that were more spiritual get buried further on down the river, indicating that they are getting close to the end of their reincarnations. Research has shown that people have had any number of lives and can stop after the first one, if it serves the purpose to do so. Others have had very many lives. I can tell you that I am on my 50th. That's a long time. I'm on my 50th life from what this late psychic Celia Brown has told me. She has never seen anyone that has gone over between 63 to 65 lives. So that seems to be the upper end. Remember that each life may not be a full one, but in some of those lives, we could have crossed over at an earlier age, at a younger age. Christianity believed that reincarnation was going against their religion and edited the Bible to get rid of it. But they missed a spot or two. Theologians argue that this is not true, but Sylvia Brown says that it is, and she was a theologian herself. In Matthew 17:10, the disciples asked Jesus when Elijah will come, for it was prophesied that Elijah would come again to prepare the way. Jesus replied that Elijah will come first and restore all things. I thought this was a little confusing because Jesus says Elijah will come first when clearly Jesus is discussing this with the disciples now at this time. Jesus then says, but I say unto you that Elijah is come already, and they knew him not. Then the disciples understood that he spoke of John the Baptist. John the Baptist was the reincarnation of Elijah. In John 9:2, Jesus and his disciples pass a man who was blind from birth. They asked Jesus, who did sin, this man or the parents, that he be born blind? They are proposing that the blind man has done something wrong before his birth. Could it be from a previous life? Jesus did answer that it was neither of these cases. The National Spiritualist Organization does not deny reincarnation, but since it cannot be proven, they prefer not to talk about it. I was surprised to learn that a group of people splintered off from the national organization to form the National Spiritual Alliance in early 1913 that believed and openly discussed reincarnation. So they were spiritualists with the reincarnation also added into it. Some people believe that they have lived enough lives and are tired of the cycle. They want to stop, but are being punished for something that they have done wrong in a previous life. Or maybe they have not evolved enough to be able to remain a spirit and have to come back. Instead, think of it as school years. Some people complete their education, and after high school, I'm done with education stuff. I don't want to do any more education. It's over. But then there are some other people who want to go on to higher education, to learn more. And so it is with reincarnation. I was surprised to learn that some spirits don't want to come back, but must do so to complete their education. The book Life Beyond by Hans Holzer talks a great deal about reincarnation. Hans was a hypnotherapist who regressed people to past lives. He wouldn't take their word for it and did exhaustive research to verify the information that he was getting from these sessions. And some of it was in excruciating detail. In a patient named Ruth, while entranced, she spoke of learning about her shortcomings in the life that she had just left. She then progressed with extra guidance then on the other side, to the point where she could go back and try it again. Her teacher told her that it was time, but she didn't want to go back. As she explained, well, I didn't really have a choice. These things are already decided. She said that their teacher explained that she had learned, she had practiced, she had meditated, she now understood all the implications of that life, and with the right attitude. But she hadn't been tested. It was impossible to know if that knowledge would stick until she tried it in the world. And you must try it in the world to know whether it has gotten into your bones. Ruth then asked how they were going to do this. The teacher replied, you have to be a baby. And Ruth replied, but I don't want to be a baby. There is nothing dignified about being a baby. Ruth then remembered that she went into sleep and then having a sensation of diving or spinning. And the next thing she knew, she was crying in her mother's arms. And now you know why babies cry. I don't want to be. It is not such a great sacrifice to be born again and measured against our eternal lives as spirits. A 90-year span of time on earth may seem like a long time as we sit here on this side. But once we return, it is no more than a semester of education, if even that. And with the building up of experiences with each lifetime, we become wiser and wiser. With this wisdom, we can do more over on the other side. We can teach others and know what we are talking about. No one can accuse us of saying, oh, you just read that in a book somewhere. No, we've lived it. An example of this is with my own father. Through a medium, I learned that my dad was helping a group of people on the other side after his passing. This group was very mistrusting of others, but they trusted my dad because he had been in the Navy like they had. So you see how, with his military experience, he was able to break through barriers. And he wouldn't have been able to do that if he hadn't experienced a life being in the Navy. So what are the lessons that we learn? There are so many that it is impossible to get very many in one lifetime. And that's why we incarnate so many times. I would like to show you a couple of my lifetimes in the past. I had taken some classes in hypnosis, and so had to be a patient for some of the other students. And it was difficult to get any information other than what I saw at the moment in several lives. It wasn't very helpful because it was like getting a postcard. It's like, here's the postcard, and I look at it, it's like, I don't know any of these people in this postcard. It's like, I don't, what does this mean? I don't know. So it was a little frustrating because I wasn't getting the information that a lot of people do when they go into regressions. But I found out Reverend Sandy Decatur had led some of us in a past life regression in Zoom classes. And I didn't think it was going to work, but it did. And I got a lot of details in these meditations, which really surprised me. So I had a life in England in the 1700s in a prison. But I worked there. I wasn't a prisoner. Because I would prepare the cells and help escort the prisoners with the guard into these cells where they were going to spend their sentence. I was not treated very well by my co-workers because I remember in a scene, it was mealtime, and I went to a room that had a big round table, and some of my co-workers were sitting there eating, and one grabbed a chicken drumstick and just threw it at me on the floor. And I was thinking, that wasn't a very nice thing to do. But apparently that's the way it was. That lesson was about enduring a mundane life. So that was the lesson. In another life, I was a guru in India. And I helped an orphan and would read from Casting of Sticks for those that came seeking a reading for a fee. That life was about being of service to others. In another, I was a World War II bomber pilot, shot down behind enemy lines and captured. I was tortured to death. It wasn't a very fun thing, but I wasn't feeling any pain. It was like watching a movie. When I passed, I was still freaked out, on my knees, and my spirit guide was calming me down. Now this is the interesting part. Once I'd been calmed down, 3 spirits appeared. They were all wearing this elaborate costumes with headgear and everything, and they started taking the headgear off. And they said, we were just in a play. The play is now ended, so now we're taking off our costumes. Just like you were in a play, you were a prisoner. That play is ended, so now you can take off your costume. And I thought that was a very interesting way of explaining things. They gave them like a demonstration to me, show me it's over now. Whatever trauma you experience, it's over. It's done with now. So I have one more that also contains a pearl of wisdom. I attended, I should probably tell you that. What would be the life lesson from something like that? Well, it turns out in that life, I was well-to-do. I had money, I could do whatever I wanted, I had very nice things, and I thought of myself as being very important, more important than other people. And then going through that process of being tortured showed me, no, you're not special. So that was the lesson for that life. But in this, the last one, which contains the pearl of wisdom, I had attended a psychic fair recently and had attended a lecture on past lives. And the instructor led us all in a meditation to the past. I had a past life as a cowboy. I was in the Southwest. I was wearing a 3-piece suit, which is kind of unusual for a cowboy. But I was working for the government. And I think I was working for the Bureau of Indian Affairs. So I had gone to an Indian... Did I mess up? Oh well. I had gone to an Indian reservation. And while I was there, the Indians were showing me things. They had this dirt, they're pointing to the ground, they're scooping it up, showing me this dirt. So I understood that they've been forced to live in this reservation where they can't grow anything because the dirt's so terrible. And so I took some of that dirt with me to take it back to officials who I reported to at a cavalry fort. I went to the cavalry fort. And then we showed the scene where I was standing before this government official. He was sitting behind a desk. And I was upset because I knew that they weren't going to do anything to help these Indians. And so I took this dirt and I threw it on his desk. And I pointed to it and said, this is what they have to live on. And basically the response was, well, we'll look into it. And I knew they weren't going to do anything. So then our teacher or instructor told us to advance us to the last day of our lives. And I remember showing, I was wearing my 3-piece suit. I was laying in a cot and I was sick. I was coughing and I was coughing up blood. I was like, okay, so I'm sick. This is probably the way I'm going to go. And then she says, okay, move beyond that. What was the lesson for this life? And I was disgusted because I didn't learn anything from this life. It was like I tried to do something and I couldn't get it done. It was like it was a waste of time. I was told, no, it wasn't. It was like you may not have been able to help the natives, but you helped build your character. So that's just a lesson for us all that even though things may not be going the way that we think they should be going, we're still learning something from it. So that is my talk. So thank you for that. And now, Lynn Rogers would like to come up and add to that about reincarnation. She has some of her own input. So, Lynn, come on up.
Good morning. So, nothing happens by chance, does it? And so, we were working on a song a few weeks ago, and this was a chance to debut it on Past Lives. I also brought with me today a booklet of a wonderful teacher I had who passed from this world she lived between 1911 and 1986, Jessica Madigan, who probably was Edgar Casey's most heartfelt interpreter. And she wrote in one of her 14 booklets or books, How to Discover Your Own Past Lives. Again and again in lectures, we are asked the same question. is there anyone who has the gifts and abilities of Edgar Cayce? Our answer is always the same. Where life reading is concerned, there is someone who has even greater abilities than Edgar Cayce, and that someone is you. Edgar Cayce indicated that we can remember our own past when we wish to do so, for not only is it written in the Akashic records, but within our own subconscious minds. Annie Besant, who carried on the work of Madame Blavatsky for many years, was once asked why we do not remember past life experiences on a conscious level, and she answered by saying, "You've forgotten your childhood, though you have the same physical brain now. In another life you had a different brain. It is only the spirit which passes from life to life." If then we are to remember past incarnations, we must reach the memory of the spirit. During the past 20 years, she wrote this long ago, there's been cumulative evidence of reincarnation from many sources. In Dianetics, it was discovered that not only would the subject go back on the time track into an event which occurred in his childhood, but at times she would find herself in a former life, which existed long before her present birth. There can, of course, be other explanations of this, or other possibilities. Carl Jung used the phrase collective unconscious to describe racial memory which is existent in all of us. It was only in his latter years that he revealed a memory of what would seem to have been a past life of his own, which would come under the category of individual unconscious. And through meditation, dreams, reverie, hypnosis, or lifted memory, we can discover our past life memories within ourselves. Through the clairvoyance of Edgar Cayce, there are many references to the Akashic records, or what the readings choose to call God's Book of Remembrance. So again, Jessica mentioned, you can, in meditation, discover a past life. Through hypnosis, my late husband, Joseph Haddox, who looked a lot like Andrew Jackson Davis, led past life regression and helped people find past lives. It can be through reverie, through your dreams, through lifted memory. You go to a place that you've never been before, as when Reverend Mary Gary was on a business trip for Kaiser, and she was in Nathaniel and Sophia Hawthorne's house, and as she went up the cramped stairs, she said, "I've never liked that stairway." So you're somewhere and memory lifts. Unconscious past life recall, or an association method, a questionnaire. And Jessica and Hugh Lynn Cayce, Edgar Cayce's son, devised a questionnaire which is in this book. And I won't go through all the questions, but I'll just ask you to consider several. If at this moment you were handed $10,000 with the explicit instruction you must visit any country in the world, where would you choose to go? Think about that for a minute. Where would you choose to go? And the answer to the question is the places that you want to go are generally past lives, places in which you were happy. What country would you be the least likely to choose? Another clue. Of all the motion pictures, stage, plays, TV shows, etc., what has moved you the most emotionally, and why? Is there any movie, TV, etc., production that you've ever walked out on because you could not stand it? Why? And that would include books. So for example, I was very moved by Dr. Zhivago, and I was very upset at Black Beauty being mistreated. The horse. The things that you fear may be those things that you can cleanse through past life work. Something that hasn't happened to you in this life, and probably won't happen again, but something that you lived through. If you had to be an animal for one day only, which animal would you choose? Which animal would you be least likely to choose? When you think of a parent or parent image, what appeals to you about this individual? What appeals to you the least? Think for a moment of the person who's brought you the most suffering in this life. What characteristic disturbs you the most about the person? Think of the person who has brought you the greatest happiness. What characteristic do you most admire? And all these characteristics of animals and people and parent images are parts of ourselves. And they're the parts of ourselves that we meet from life to life, because whatever we do returns to us. So friendship that we extend returns to us. And sometimes the things we forget to do or had not to do return to us so that we can learn the law of karma. And I think of the Old Testament, if you substitute the word Lord for the law of karma, there's a connection there. So just to conclude my short presentation, what are some of the lives I found? Well, Jessica was a wonderful Akashic past life reader and lecturer, but she always reached out to people in need. And there was a fellow who was paraplegic, who was her musician. She made him a musician. And he had readings till all hours. And I asked Jessica for a past life reading, and she said, you know, darling, I think you could discover them yourself. So she suggested praying for about a year to find out who I'd been, and that gradually through dreams, things would happen, and they did. So one of the lines of the song is about somebody in the 16th century royal jail. Yes, that was me in England at the time of James I. I dreamed all of this. I was a young girl married off as a teenager, and I didn't want to stay married. And someone didn't want me to stay married, so a woman friend and I, there was a man blocking the divorce. No one got a divorce, much less a teenager. But we sent some potions, some magic potions. And most people were often dying of food poisoning. So when he passed away of that cause, I was blamed and ended up in the tower, which wasn't a good life to have. So I said, Jessica, that's my first life. Have I always been doing that? And she said, I have a feeling that you had a lifetime back in the church, maybe in a convent. And I was led very strongly to one in Assisi long ago. And it went on. So when I talked in the song about a father who tried to help the poor, I had very strong dreams and synchronicity that led me to be the youngest daughter of a socialist in Dickens, England, who actually saw all of the child labor and the death of children in his family. And so I was helping translate for that cause and work on women's vote and so forth. But when he died, I had gotten involved with a man in the socialist group who was kind of a womanizer and not the greatest guy. And so we lived together without being married for the longest time. And then he decided to marry a local actress. And he left. There was a dog that had rabies in the neighborhood. He left out a poison. And after he left that night, melodramatically, I took the poison. But there was no 911 to call. I was gone. And so that created a lifetime of suicide karma, which Jessica said can bring you into a period where you have some loneliness or lack of connection because you were needed and you left that life. But I think I've worked that through. And so I had a life just after it in films early on in the film industry. And it was wonderful, and I was helping co-create films and music, and it was just at a height. And then my own system, maybe because of the hair coloring that was pretty poisonous in those days, I developed a kidney poisoning, and I was gone. So, you know, we come and we go, but our destiny is really the talent and our soul purpose. That continues from life to life. We enrich and we go along in the journey of many lives. So I just wanted to share with you a little bit about Jessica Madigan. I'm just going to give this to Bob to read for a while. It's a rare old booklet, and more ideas are coming. So we're eternal beings. We're going on a journey, and these are like stage plays where we play a role and then we move forward. But our essence remains with us, and as we apply our spiritual principles and listen to the angels and our Creator, we progress into grace. So, thank you. Those were together.